Hey there, folks. Welcome to Magic Online Modern. This is the Lightning Company Deck Tech. This is Ford, aka Moontime Dweller, and we are here with Red Green, still keeping with the Red Green. The basis of this deck is Collected Company. You look at the top 6 cards of your library, you put 2 creatures of converted mana cost 3 or less onto the battlefield of those 6 cards. So therefore, just about every card in the deck is a creature in the main deck. There are the recently unbanned Bloodbraid Elves in the deck too. They kind of act as a mini Collected Company. They're 2 spells at once. They throw off control decks a lot. When they leave up 2 mana for 1 counter spell, and you're playing 2 spells at once, pretty difficult to deal with. Fantastic card. But the basis of this is really fun. It's kind of a gimmick with Collected Company, and you're using one of my favorite cards in all of Magic, probably top 2 or 3, from the Dark originally, Ball Lightning. 6/1, trample, haste, and it dies at the end of turn. Simple, simple, simple. It has a green counterpart. It is the exact same card. It was kind of the thing going in Planar Chaos and that whole time, like 2004, 2005 in Magic. They were making opposite versions of the exact same card or something very close. They were making a lot of, Maguses or Maguses, whatever the good correct pronunciation of it, that word is. Magus of the Library and, all the different things. Really fun card here. Strangleroot Geist, 2/1 Undying, haste. Everything in this deck has haste except for Scavenging Ooze. So we have 4 of those. This is like an F&M promo version of this card. I used to have a set of these also. Very fun. I missed Hell's Thunder. Hell's Thunder is very similar to Ball Lightning and Groundbreaker in that it dies at the end of turn, but it has flying instead of trample. And it's only a 4/4 and has haste also. Hellspark is, obviously the mini version of Ball Lightning and Groundbreaker in that it only has 3 power, but it does the exact same thing, and eventually it does 6, possibly, through Unearthing for 2 mana, which is also something that Hell's Thunder does. Hell's Thunder can come back for 5 mana, so it can possibly be 8 damage, for 8 mana. So, pretty strong cards here. I've noticed a lot of, you take a lot of life when you're doing a lot of fetch lands and shock lands and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of just burn and electrolyze and, a lot of control decks have a lot of just burn cards in them. And you just lose a lot of life in general with this deck. So I thought it was pretty imperative to have 2 Scavenging Oozes in the main deck. Otherwise, in the 1-drop area, you got Birds of Paradise, Lightning Bolt. Oh, what a pair they've been. And Blossoming Defense, +2/+2, and Hexproof to any creature for instant speed at 1 mana. This is a really fun deck to me because I get to play a lot of older cards that have been around for, 10 plus years. Groundbreaker, Ball Lightning. I don't think Hellspark's been around that long. But, Birds of Paradise, Lightning Bolt. I just love seeing these old cards. I've got my Onslaught Wooded Foothills. Just brings me back. Pretty simple land base here. You got 4 Wooded Foothills, 4 Stomping Grounds, 3 of each basics, 4 of the Copperline Gorges, which is a terrific card, especially for this kind of deck because it's trying to win, as soon as possible in a blistering fashion. I put out 1 Cavern of Souls, just for a little bit of holding off control, just a little bit, just in case. There are, 16 elementals in the deck. So it's a very good card to use with that. Otherwise, you just kind of use it as you need it if you're really desperate, because you got birds, elves, spirits, and oozes, so they're all different. But elementals, you can deal with that pretty well. Of course, the Bloodstain Mire makes for the 5th fetch land. Moving on to the sideboard, it's pretty diverse. I thought Guttural Response was a good card. It was it's just a card that I loved when it came out in Shadowmoor. I've always been on this, lifelong crusade to fight control, beat control, destroy the counter spells, and it just became to the point where I couldn't beat them, and I got to join them. And I love when they print a version of Pyroblast or any kind of non-blue counterspell. Always gets me giddy, and I've always tried to fit it into any kind of green-red deck that I play. And sometimes it's terrible, but it could turn out to be a lot of fun. So we're going to see here how that works out. Relic of Progenitus, usual suspect in a sideboard that you see Graveyard Hate. Just 2 of them, not a big deal. Mainly have 2 relics in there because I have 2 other Scavenging Oozes. So if you have 4 oozes and 2 relics, you should be good on being able to take out their graveyard. Because the way Scavenging Ooze is worded, you exile the card from the graveyard, and you get a +1/+1 counter on it and gain 1 life. Moving right along, sorry for the check there. I didn't know if my microphone was on. Had to check again. Destructive Revelry, red-green. Destroy an artifact or enchantment, deals 2 damage to their permanent's controller. Kind of like Smash to Smithereens, but a little bit better. A little more mana intensive. It requires green in order to happen. But I think it's pretty fantastic. A little bit ironic because probably about 25% of the time I'm destroying the Eidolon of the Great Revel. And storyline wise, you would look at this card and you would think, looks like they're reveling and getting ready to summon an Eidolon of the Great Revel, only to destroy him. So I don't know. I always thought that was kind of a funny happenstance. Moving into Damping Sphere, it's a new card. Kind of shuts down, Tron and Storm, most likely. That's what everybody keeps in mind when they're going against this deck, or going against this card, or putting this card in their sideboard. Third time was the charm there. So I was just trying it. It kind of hurts me also. It slows down both players. I don't really have big mana in this deck, but I do play multiple spells a turn. And that can be a big issue sometimes. So I try not to bring it in all the time unless I, just have a hopeless match against Tron or something like that. Next up is Anger of Gods. You can bring this in against Storm, just like Relic and Damping Sphere. Usually I only bring 1 in maybe, just in case they go off with the Empty the Warrens. But otherwise this is good for, humans and merfolk and, zombies, and just really any tribal or elves or anything like that. And it exiles them if they do 3, if they die. So it's just a good card all around. I used to love Volcanic Fallout because it couldn't be countered, and it dealt 2 damage to the creatures and players, and then you could redirect it to the Planeswalkers. But since that rule ended and this card came out, it was just an inevitability that this would take over in the sideboard of any red-green deck that's trying to wipe creatures out. Last but not least, the Affinity Killer itself, Creeping Corrosion, trying to shut out Lantern Control and Affinity. I don't bring it in that often because I don't see Affinity that often on Magic Online. Maybe I'm just lucky. At least with the 2 decks that I've been able to put on YouTube, I just don't see it that often. But it's in there because I know Affinity is out there. Well, thanks for joining me, folks. That's really all I've got to say about this deck. It is 10 out of 10 in the fun department. Out of control. I love this deck. It can get the win out of nowhere. I wasn't recording earlier. I beat a legit Jund deck, and I lost to an Elves deck that I was, not recording also for some reason. Beat a couple other jankier decks, like Mono Black Devotion, things like that. But it's just super fun. And, if y'all happen to already have, Collected Company and, all of the lands that are necessary for this, the deck is really not that expensive. if you just take all of that out, I would say, maybe $40 at the most, $30, depending on the sideboard and whatever you want to use in the sideboard. I mean, it's pretty easy to get. So I hope you all enjoy watching the videos. I've got 4 matches, at least I'm ready to post, I think. And I hope you all have a good rest of your night. Thanks for joining me.